Hello, and welcome to the virtual book tour on implementing project portfolio management, a companion guide to the standard for portfolio management. The agenda for today's session includes an introduction. Why did we create this book in the first place? The biographies of the contributors, there are 8 of us, and then do a little deeper dive in the various section of the book, starting with the executive guide, the practitioner guide, and the strategist guide. And later, as we'll explain, the executive guide was designed for the decision maker, the practitioner guide is designed for the portfolio managers, and the strategist guide is designed for the thinkers and the tinkers out there who want to look beyond just the current way of doing portfolio management. And then we'll also talk about some of the next steps. The idea of this book first appeared in one of the early workshops of the Portfolio Standard Committee back in around 2015. This is when we received the direction from PMI to create the fourth edition of the standard as a principle-based standard, which is a significant deviation from the previous editions, which is really a process-centric standards. As a principle-based standard, the main question that the book attempts to answer is really what is portfolio management. And this is a significant deviation from the past, which is really not just the what, but also how portfolio management is applied. So as the committee started working, really addressing the question what is, a lot of the hows that we discussed, especially by the various contributors, was sort of put aside. Now, this doesn't really tarnish in any way the accomplishment as well as the usefulness of the Portfolio Management Standard 4th edition. As a principle-based standard, we are able to really broaden the coverage of what portfolio management is about. For example, we added a performance domain on life cycle, as well as really highlighting the importance of value and elevating it to its own performance domain. We also make the standard more concise. So if you look at sort of the core meaty part of the standard, you notice that the fourth edition is only really 95 pages versus 135 pages in the previous edition. Now, for those of you who've been working with PMI and using, for example, the PMBOK, you know how difficult it is to actually shrink a standard as PMBOK has grown a little bulkier with each successive edition. So to the committee, this is really an incredible accomplishment. The 8 of us who really thought about, we should maybe perhaps sit back and write another book and really addressing the house, came together and created this book. What we wanted to do is create a highly useful book on portfolio management and really accessible to 3 primary groups of audience. These are the business executives and organization leaders. So part 1 of the book sets the introduction but also sets the business case for portfolio management. These decision makers probably don't need to know all the levels of detail on how to apply portfolio management techniques, but what they do need to know is where among the organizational activities that portfolio management exists and how does it really add value to the organization. Part 2 is written for the portfolio managers and the practitioners. This is mapped very closely to the standards, literally chapter by chapter. And it provides the detail on how to provide portfolio management. Last is the strategists and the thinkers. This is the part 3 of the book. For those who are looking to go beyond just a mere understanding of the current world of portfolio management and sort of raise the curtain a little bit and peek behind it to see what's likely to come in the future. In there, we have quite a number of various discussions from strategic business execution, system thinking, complexity, cross-cultural, and other discussions I think that's highly useful. So what's in it for you? Why should you spend the next hour with us? First of all, thanks many thanks to those who joined us at the launch of the book tour on November 1st, 2018, which was the International Project Management Day. In this hour of recording, what we'll do is cover the broad view of this book. So, in addition to thanking you and our gratitude for your hour, we believe there are at least four important values for you. First, learn the content of the book, which very closely map to the standard. So in some ways, you're sort of gaining two value in one, as well as some of the latest thinking in portfolio management. The book itself is supported by its own website, www.implementppm.com. And our plan is to provide the latest thinking there, and also adding some tools and perhaps blog posts. So please bookmark this page. Also on this site, you're able to contact each of the contributors individually should you have specific questions. Next, network and join other practitioners with a special discount offered by PM Advisory. So what we did here is we created a LinkedIn group called Companion Guide to the Standard for Portfolio Management. It is designed to support this book, and you can see the link here to join. One of the book editors, which is me, Dr. T. Wu, I'm the CEO of PM Advisory, which is one of the few registered education providers that offer portfolio management, PFMP, program management, PGMP, training, as well as a lot of the other specialty area like risk management, Agile, in addition to project management office. What I would be doing is offering specials on this LinkedIn forum for people who want to pursue certifications. So what we plan to do is offer a 25% off for the training paid for in 2018. Number 3, contribute and advance the field. If you wish to be more active, we also created an advanced project management forum to conduct practical research to really advance the field. And some of the work also potentially earns PFMP PDU. For those of you who know, that is actually also highly, highly valuable. And the PDU, to be clear, is offered by PMO Advisory. So to sign up to join this committee, go to www.implementppm.com. If you scroll down, there's a sign-up form. Now, a couple words on the Advanced Portfolio Forum. We actually already started this. There's a core team of about 36 professionals. And we are still shaping what are some of the broad questions and directions that we want to move into. So when we're ready to share that with the rest of the world of practitioners, we'll open that up probably sometime in the first, if not the second quarter of 2019. And then lastly, for spending this hour with us, you also earned a one technical portfolio management PDU. And for those of you who are certified in portfolio management, you know this is actually pretty rare and difficult to obtain. The claim instruction is at the end of the presentation. So let's talk about the contributors. Starting with myself, my name is Dr. T. Wu. I am certified in portfolio, program, project, and risk management. I am one of the 2 chief editors, and I contributed a number of the chapters. In addition to being the CEO of PMO Advisory, I'm also a college professor. I serve on multiple core committees with PMI, portfolio, and before and now currently on risk. And I'm also a U.S. delegate on the International Standard Organization Technical Committee 258. Panos, why don't I turn to you to have a brief introduction of yourself?
Hello, everybody from Athens, Greece, and thank you for your participation. I am Panos Hadjipanos, the other co-editor of the book. I am currently a consultant at the World Bank and at the European Commission on Transformational Change and on Organizational Project Management, working mostly at the portfolio and program levels. I am a civil and environmental engineer by profession and have been working in the construction industry, particularly infrastructure programs and projects, for over 35 years, 15 years at the executive level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulus. Next, let's turn our attention to the other contributors, organized predominantly by the chapter in which they wrote. So let's start with Steve Butler, who's a portfolio manager, also a charter IT professional. He contributed to Chapter 3, which is on strategy. Nick Clemens, PMP, as well as Agile certified. He has vast experience working the government sector in the United States. He contributed to Chapter 4 on governance, Chapter 8 on risk, and Chapter 12 on Agile portfolio management. Next, we have Debbie, another portfolio manager. She contributed heavily to the creation of the chapter on value as well as chapter on the risk. We have Warren Long, who is a professional engineer in PMP, and he spent considerable time editing the book. Dave Ross, who really earned our respect and gratitude for leading the Portfolio Standard Committee. He himself is a project and program manager. He also spent considerable time reviewing and editing the book. And finally, we have Gary Schickman, who is also certified in a bunch of things in the portfolio management world. He was the vice chair of the Portfolio Standard Committee, and he contributed to Chapter 12 on Agile portfolio management. So let's dive deeper into the book, starting with the Part 1. Part 1, Executive Guide to Portfolio Management. This part is really designed to give a comprehensive but high-level overview, description of portfolio management. It includes the what, the why, who, and the how. Everyone is encouraged to review this part for at least two reasons. One, to achieve an executive level understanding of portfolio management, and to also understand what senior managers care about in portfolio manager. The chapter 1 has a framework that really examines where do portfolio management fit among all the organizational activities. So here, using a framework that Dr. Wu created first in another book, it artificially and abstractly created a scale 1 to 10 in which fits all the organization activities. The more specific ones have a smaller number, as approaching 1, and the more higher abstract task and activities have a higher number, again in this case on a scale 1 to 10. So what you see is in 10, you have sort of the corporate and enterprise strategy, which I'm sure many of you agree, it can be quite abstract. But as organizations transform those strategies into something concrete, from the enterprise strategy to organization strategy to business strategy, departmental, functional, product strategy, portfolio management is at this crossroad between sort of the ideas and planning and the actual execution. From portfolio in organizations, there could be programs, projects, other initiatives, sometimes the work assigned to specific departments and teams, and finally, at a very specific task and activity in which a programmer sitting in Palo Alto is typing out a line of code in support of a project, which is a part of program, which can be a part of portfolio, that builds a new product for a technology company, for example. Here you also see later, which we'll talk about, sort of the three major pillars of organizational activities. The idea of planning, changing, and operating. Very quickly, planning deals with an organization's plan. Even a mom and pop shop down the street corner selling candies will still have to count how many candies they sold so they can replenish that. In a larger organization, of course, planning activity can be quite significant, including executive offsites, annual budgeting. Operating is keeping the lights on, moving the business as usual, making the money. For example, in a cookie company, it would have been selling the cookie, making the cookie, distributing it, selling it, taking that revenue to continue the operation of the company. However, no organization can really truly stay static and still be effective moving forward. And that is the realm of changing. Now, portfolio management fits right in that crossroad between that planning, changing, and operating. So, in chapter one, we make a case for portfolio management. We talk about what is portfolio management and portfolio. What are the relationship between portfolio management and organization, between portfolio program project management, and how to make portfolio management work? What are some essential principles that executive ought to keep in mind? And then finally, how to be an effective portfolio manager. The next the next part is now moving into the second part, a practitioner guide to portfolio management. This part offers an in-depth examination of the various performance domains discussed in the Standard for Portfolio Management, the fourth edition. In addition, this book goes beyond the standard with some additional domains and concepts that are in practice today. Each chapter offered new insights on how to apply the principles covering the standards, and as appropriate, selective tools and templates are introduced. So here in this book, you'll have the portfolio lifecycle, strategy, governance, capacity and capability, engaging portfolio stakeholders, value management, and risk management. Panos, over to you on the portfolio lifecycle.
Chapter 2: The Portfolio Lifecycle. The current edition of the Portfolio Standard encompasses for the first time a portfolio lifecycle. The entire cycle of the portfolio includes initiation, planning, execution, and optimization. Throughout the portfolio lifecycle, portfolio management is performed in an organizational environment which is usually much broader than the portfolio itself. The chapter contains sections shown in the slide: the portfolio lifecycle within the organizational environment, the portfolio management framework, the portfolio component stages, and the portfolio stakeholder sections of the chapter mainly discuss the need for regular alignment to strategic objectives, introduce portfolio governance, discuss the work of the portfolio manager, particularly towards balancing portfolio risk with the added value brought about by successful deliveries, contains information about the selection, prioritization, and resourcing of the portfolio components, on negotiating agreements with key stakeholders, on component interdependencies and understanding of the whole portfolio ecosystems, and also on evaluating, prioritizing, approving, and implementing change. The remaining sections deal with the very important topic of component interrelationships, with managing dependencies and component interfaces, on how the organizational framework influences a disciplined portfolio management process, and on how dependencies evolve during the portfolio lifecycle. The last section includes some discussion on proven good practices that the portfolio manager may follow. Thank you very much. T, back to you.
Thank you, Panos. In chapter 3, we turn our attention to portfolio strategic management. This chapter is written by three of us: Steve Butler, myself, and also Panos. So, strategy is a very broad topic. What we try to do here is simplify strategy into what I consider the three general type of strategies. The deliberate strategy. This is when organization, very much like the traditional waterfall planning, figure out what they really want to do at a fairly detailed level before they started organizing and committing resources to their implementation. That is a fairly classical way of looking at business strategies, and most organization practices some form of this classic practice. But as we know, the world is very fast moving. Agility, for example, is on top of a lot of executives' mind. And so in the last 20, probably 30 years, a new style of strategy started emerging, and it is called the emerging strategy. The emerging strategy doesn't truly believe that the detailed planning, as in the deliberate strategy, adds significant value because, of course, most strategies likely change, especially when they confront with a first major issue or the occurrence of a first major risk. So the emerging strategy really sets the direction of the company and then sort of move toward that direction along the way, and they may change. So by the time they get to the final destination, it may not be the north that the organization originally set out to do. It could be northeast because the whole market have changed. Now, a variant of the emerging strategy, but it's worth calling out as its own particular general type of strategy, is the organization learning. In organization learning, this is where there are multiple feedback loops. Not only when you didn't quite achieve the goal and you tried again or improved the way, in the multiple areas of the strategy, it may very well go back and ask, is it the right strategy in the first place? So you get into a first order change, second order change, possibly a tertiary, a third order change, as organization learns and improves. So the chapters in this book, as laid out, includes strategy and strategic alignment, enabling well-defined strategy, understanding strategic risk appetite, and how does that impact the way organization plans. Develop portfolio goals, strategic objective, strategic plan, creating the portfolio charter, the roadmap, and then in the execution, the constant optimization, managing strategic alignment, managing component dependencies, managing portfolio alignment to the organization strategy, and finally, optimizing the portfolio management process. In particular, we focus on a tool called the AHP, Analytical Hierarchy Processing. So what we hope to demonstrate in this chapter is that the type of strategy really matters in how portfolio management ultimately is designed, shaped, and to help the organization achieve superior value. Chapter 4 is on portfolio governance, written by Nick Clemens. This chapter really talks about the governance principles of portfolio management, how it's often aligned, for example, with the enterprise governance. Examine the portfolio governance management itself in great detail, and also highlight some of the tools and techniques. So in the diagram on the left, you can see the sort of the cycle between assessing, evaluate, and the critical thinking that comes through from investigating the situation, determining the objective, generate alternative, evaluate alternative, and choose a solution set, and then implement the solution set as a part of the critical thinking required for portfolio management and its governance. The diagram on the right, just to show in a very simplified fashion how portfolio governance is really tied to both the enterprise governance influenced by the overall organization strategy. You also provide a broad overview of how portfolio programs as well as project and all of them come together and fit in. Next, we'll turn to Panos for Chapter 5 on resource capacity and capability management. Panos.
Chapter 5 Portfolio Resource Capacity and Capability Management. Portfolio component resourcing is obviously of paramount importance. If components are not resourced properly, the portfolio will fail to accomplish its intent to fulfill organizational strategic objectives. The objective of portfolio resources capacity and capability management is to determine the optimal balance between what the organization can do now, capacity, and what the organization has the potential to do, capability. Capacity and capability management focuses on the human, financial, and other assets an organization utilizes to resource the entire portfolio. Capacity and capability management's primary function is to balance resource supply with resource demand for all the components of the portfolio throughout the portfolio life cycle. The term supply refers to resource capacity. It includes funding and staffing resources, as well as equipment and other physical assets shared among portfolio components. Demand refers to the resource requirements from the portfolio components. The goal of managing supply and demand is to ensure resource capacity is optimally allocated against resource requirements based on known organizational priorities and potential value. Resources should be allocated to minimize both unused capacity and unmet demand. The chapter main sections include the guiding principles for managing organizational resource capacity and capability, capacity planning, capacity management, supply and demand management, monitor, control, and optimize supply and demand, the assessment and development of organizational capabilities, balancing capacity and capability, and performance analytics and reporting. Thank you. Back to you, T.
Chapter 6 is about engaging portfolio stakeholders. In this chapter, we started with defining who are the stakeholders and what is stakeholder management all about. Then we started talking about why is it so critical, especially at the portfolio level, to manage stakeholders well. We then look at some of the important activities of stakeholder management, and that includes identify, organize and prioritize, plan stakeholder engagement, and then develop a robust portfolio management communication plan. We aimed the chapter on how to engage stakeholders and manage their expectations sustainably throughout the portfolio lifecycle. And the key word here is sustainably. That's what makes it really hard. We also apply a number of tools and techniques, one of which you could see on the right here. This is a fairly traditional power interest grid. Power is on the y-axis, high versus low, and the interest is on the x-axis. These are people's amount of interest they have on this particular portfolio. Low means very little interest, high, of course, very involved. And as you see in this matrix, the 2 by 2, you could create 4 quadrants, starting with engage proactively in quadrant 1. These are really the stakeholders with high interest and high power, which of course can be the stakeholders such as sponsors, executive sponsors. Sometimes it could be customers as well, who the end users of internal system, for example, they have a high interest to know what is exactly going on. And some of the executives in those stakeholder groups and user groups may also have sufficient influence to be in that high category. The next you have the second group, which are the ensure satisfaction. These are more the people on the peripheral. They're not really directly impacted. They may not be directly contributing to a portfolio, but they do have quite a bit of power. These could be executives in other areas or even the C-level who may see a lot broader portfolio. This could be one of the items, but not directly impacted. So these are the stakeholders that the portfolio manager need to make sure that they're satisfied, because they do have quite a bit of influence and power over your portfolio. But day to day, they probably are not as an intimate concern and interest. Next, you have the 3, sustained communication. These are a group of stakeholders who don't have as much power, but who actually are quite involved. These could be the core team members. They could be the end users. The end users, in some cases, may not have a lot of influence over the particular portfolio, and it could be customers. But these are people you really want to make sure that they're happy and sustain that communication. And finally, you have the 4th group, which is the monitor change. These are people relatively low on the power, relatively low on the interest side. Again, it could be end users, for example. If it's a public work set of portfolio of engagements, these could be the general public in some cases. They are not particularly influential on the overall portfolio, and they don't really have too much concerns and interest in it, but they may be impacting some ways. So there, you want to monitor the change. Should that group suddenly becomes more interested or more powerful, let's say there could be a regulatory body in the peripheral, and for the most part, it doesn't really touch upon the portfolio. But if suddenly the work has changed in your portfolio that start engaging that segment of the regulators, then of course they can now be more powerful in directly impacting your portfolio, and hence you need to engage them. So that's monitoring the change. Chapter 7 is about portfolio value management. This is written by Debbie McKee, um, and it really elevated the value management to the rightful place in portfolio management. After all, this entire endeavor of called portfolio management is about helping organization achieve superior value. There are four main chapters in this book: setting and negotiating value targets. Um, the portfolio, depending on organization, can have very different goals. So what's value in one organization may not be value in another. For example, in a nonprofit, the value can be saving people's life, or in the case of American Red Cross, be the first on site after a disaster to start the recovery process or the rescue process, versus a for-profit organization, which could be market share or revenue gains. The second chapter is about the value management framework, how to establish a proper framework to help your organization. 3, take a closer look at balancing the value and risk, as well as a strategic prioritization that comes up inevitably in almost all discussions. And then finally, chapter 4 on monitoring and measuring value. We apply a number of tools here, but the big one is really the Markowitz, the efficient frontier. As you can see here, in this example, what's on the dotted green line are what we consider efficient uh, uh, line, in which the endeavors underlying program, project, or components risk and return are comparable. Anything above that line, showing blue, are optimized, meaning for that given set of risks, they're actually achieving more return, more value than sort of the norm, the efficient side. And of course, anything below that is suboptimized, meaning there's too much risk for that given set of value. Chapter 8 is on portfolio risk management, and it's written by Nick Clemens and Debbie McKee. This chapter looks at risk strategically at the portfolio level. It is a pretty significant deviation from looking at risk at the project and the program level, as some of you probably are familiar with. So the chapter in this book includes the context of the portfolio risk management, the tools and techniques, the focus of the risk. We also then look at some of the specific different tools and techniques that looks at the portfolio risk management plan, risk identification, portfolio level risk approach, processes and policies, guidance to subordinate level projects, program operational entities, risk associated with stakeholder engagement, portfolio risk assessment, portfolio risk response, as well as risk management overhead and value proposition. So the framework on the little bit out to the right, you see the project, program, portfolio, and how senior staff influence those different levels, and how organization really produce product risk response example, executing that risk response, and then as well structural risk response from the portfolio side. And all that, of course, is tied to the contingency reserve or the organization. Now we're done with the second part of the book, which again is mapped very closely to the various chapter in the standard, the fourth edition. Part 3 is where we really try to add more value. This last part of the book is designed for the thinkers and the inquisitive professionals who want to look ahead and see the future of portfolio and some of the areas of the latest development. Part 3, especially the trends in portfolio management, is a true work in progress. It contains these chapters. Let's start with Chapter 9, Strategic Business Execution. For those who knows me, this is very close and dear to my heart. What I believe, of course, is that organization, for example, can achieve very little until they really roll up their sleeves and start doing things. And doing things, of course, is in the world of business execution and is inherently more difficult, more prone to challenges and obstacles and issues and risks than just the planning. Chinese has an old saying, 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step. An organization must take that first step. It's also important to me to put a better frame around the world of project program portfolio, which in this case I frame it as a part of the strategic business execution of the organization. So starting with a broad introduction, what is strategic business execution? Then we go into some of the limitations of today's project environment. For those of you who are practitioners out there, I'm pretty sure you know inherently that execution is difficult and today it is far from perfect. So we'll lay out a strategic business execution framework that you see on the slide here, and we'll explain that a little bit later, that really includes the four major pieces. That includes creating the execution excellence culture, enhancing individual competencies, building and strengthening core disciplines, and achieving integration throughout the organization through the integrated processes. And by putting these four together, organizations are able to achieve execution excellence. Diving a little bit deeper, if you look at each of those four components, starting with the culture, for example, there's a culture for accountability, commitment, follow through, resiliency. And there could be others. The enabling competency that works more at the individual level and sometimes at a small team level that includes decision making, problem solving, managerial courage to make, let's say, unpopular decisions but the right decisions, the deep analysis. The integrating process. This is what I often call the glue that ties the organization together. Without that glue, organizations are just different sort of stovepipes, as you could see in the factory. What connects one part of the factory or operation or business unit to another? These are the integrating processes such as communication, knowledge management, issue management, performance management, strategic alignment. And then finally, the core disciplines. Organizations have many core disciplines. In the strategic business execution framework, the four that happens the most in the world of project management includes project, program, portfolio management, PMO, but there could be others such as process improvement, reengineering, organization change. So this framework is comprehensive that sets the stage when organization performing these well to achieve superior execution excellence. So here are some steps that we think are most valuable. First, establish a culture of doing the right things, which is through portfolio management, and doing them the right way, which is really the domain of program, project, and operation management. Next, genuinely treat people as the most important assets of the organization. Company talks about it all the time. People are our most important asset. But do they help people build those competencies that are most relevant to the organization? 3, develop and nurture the core disciplines as required to achieve organization goals, as if that includes portfolio management, project management, program management. And then finally, create sort of that binding force or the integrating processes that joins together the various parts of the organization into a more cohesive whole. Next, we'll turn to panels for applied system thinking here, as well as the complexity on the next slide. Panels.
Chapter 10. Applying systems thinking to portfolio management. The current portfolio standard includes for the first time in a PMI foundational standard information towards a systems approach and discusses the influence of complexity to portfolio management. Considerably expanding the information given in the portfolio standard, Chapter 10 deals with the application of systems thinking to the management of portfolios. The chapter includes the sections depicted in the current slide. At first, systems thinking is introduced, followed by how a systems approach introduces a synthesis that accounts for component interrelationships. These need to be examined further to the separate analysis of each portfolio component. Even when many of the parameters influencing the portfolio can be anticipated, there are always parameters and conditions, usually important ones, that cannot be anticipated. To probe for these, usually by investigating patterns, one must focus on the interconnections between the portfolio components, namely on the interdependencies dynamics, the flow of information, activities and change, the stacks created, and the feedback loops related to them. Examples include the execution of strategy, interactions with key stakeholders, limits to resourcing portfolio components, changing environmental conditions, the ubiquitous phenomenon of emergence, etc. Guidance is provided so that portfolio managers understand the basic building blocks of their portfolio systems and the portfolio system properties. Further guidance is provided on the critical steps required in order to integrate a systemic approach with the mainstream deterministic practices and processes throughout the portfolio lifecycle. Within the chapter, the reader will find practical information on the basic concepts of reference and the systems view that the portfolio manager has to consider iteratively during the whole portfolio lifecycle. These concepts include wholeness, component interactions, system state, stability, instability, change over time, system structure, subsystem structure, roles, behaviors and characteristics, complexity, with emphasis on ambiguity, emergence, adaptation, non-proportionality, and self-organization. Moving to Chapter 11, which has the title Encountering, Harnessing, and Navigating Complexity, the first chapter section deals with complexity awareness. You need to be constantly aware of existing as well as evolving complexity in order to navigate complexity and sometimes create conditions for its harnessing. The main themes discussed in this section are that portfolio systems are transformational and adaptive to emergent environmental change, may self-organize, and that certain parts of the portfolio system usually exhibit non-proportionality. Small changes can create disproportionately large consequences. The section contains a discussion of the characteristics of complex adaptive systems and of their effects. The next section presents the causes of complexity in a portfolio environment together with their effects. Primarily, human behavior, which is of course the most important complexity enhancer, is discussed. The central issue for emergent complexity has to do with people. We are the most important cause of complexity in project-based work. Humans are impeded by their cognitive limits, which are often unacknowledged. Complexity resulting from human behaviors stems from the interplay of behaviors, demeanors, and attitudes of people. Moreover, these factors may hinder the clear identification of goals and objectives. Further to human behavior, the component dependency dynamics and the behavior of the portfolio system are discussed. Finally, complexity caused by ambiguity, emergence, and uncertainty is presented. In addition to the causes of complexity for project-based work, there exist many classifications of complexity, each having a number of navigational good practices. Information of these is presented. The remaining sections include guidance on how to proceed with evaluating and navigating the effects of complexity during the portfolio lifecycle, and include information on the impact of portfolio complexity to the organization, where leadership, governance, flexibility, and adaptability issues are discussed, and a complexity navigational framework for the whole organization is considered. Thank you very much. Back to you, T.
Chapter 12 is written by Gary Sigma and Nick Clemens on Agile portfolio management. Now, for those of you practicing project program and portfolio management out there, you know Agile has taken this world by storm. There is a lot of value, tremendous amount of thinking in the Agile space, and is evolving very quickly. And of course, as like other management discipline, it is impacting and shaping and reshaping, I should say, how portfolio management is being considered. So here, Gary and Nick has taken this challenge of writing a chapter on what are some of the latest practices, tools, and techniques that they see in the world of Agile portfolio management. Starting with a broad coverage of Agile Manifesto, talk about the differences between Agile and traditional project and task management, explain some of the benefits of Agile, why there's a need for Agile portfolio, and then examine the various parts, starting with strategic alignment, key stakeholders, how Agile is practiced in the project program portfolio management world, what are some of the scaling techniques, decision cycles, product requirements, as well as funding management, and then with a conclusion. The table on the left shows the correspondence between the Agile and portfolio management governance level. So here we create an abstract scale of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. At the 0 level, you have the story, which is in the Agile world, for example, the Scrum. In the portfolio, that could be mapped to task or activity or work packages. At level 1, in the Agile world, you could have the feature delivery, multiple sprints, themes, incremental, modular, epics, iterations. And then on the right, you have in the project world, the portfolio management world, project. Level 2, epic. Assume these are epic across as multiple themes. You could have program. Then you truly have portfolio. And a portfolio can have components that have many different methodologies. So there's nothing inhibiting in a particular portfolio that all project has to be executed one way or the other. And then finally, getting to the senior management with the strategic thoughts. So this chapter gives the practitioners, the thinkers, and the thinkers a great examination in how portfolio management is now moving into the world of Agile. Next, we'll turn to Panos on really the cross-cultural challenges. Panos.
Chapter 13. Cross-cultural challenges and environmental factors. The chapter comprises of the 4 sections you see in the current slide. It starts with a discussion of how people coming from different cultures may perceive things differently, how awareness on causes and consequences may be developed, and on how to accommodate and create a common communication platform. Next section, 13.2, deals with the main cultural characteristics, which are the ethnic characteristics, the market and professional characteristics, and organizational characteristics. On ethnic characteristics, Hofstede and Mayer's work is considered as this work applies to project portfolio management. Both are leading global experts on cross-cultural behavior. When working with multicultural teams and stakeholders, the portfolio manager needs to know about the approaches of different cultures, needs to have the flexibility to work productively with the various individuals, and to give or take no offense from misunderstandings due to the inevitable existing cultural differences. Hofstede identified and evaluated four principal characteristics or dimensions of cultural difference. These dimensions shown in the slide are the power distance, individualism, uncertainty avoidance, and masculinity. You see brief definitions of each in the slide. These differ a lot among different ethnic cultures, and these characteristics may impact common understanding and cooperation. The second important phenomenon discussed in the chapter are the cross-cultural perceptions of time. For example, some cultures encompass strong beliefs towards respecting deadlines and that events are controlled by planning, so that order is preserved and waste is minimized. Other national cultures have considerably more relaxed beliefs towards time management. A detailed discussion based on the two ancient Greek perceptions of time, chronos and kairos, follows, with examples coming from the management of current multi-ethnic portfolios. Both chronos and kairos are important concepts relating to how we use time in project-based work. We need to balance the pressure associated with achieving goals against the clock, chronos, with the need for social and opportune time, kairos, that promotes learning and knowledge transfer, and through kairos, windows of opportunity arise, the right time to grasp and take advantage of opportunities. The final section of the chapter deals with organizational culture and the performance of organizational change through a cultural lens. Thank you very much. Back to you, T.
Thank you, Panos. Now let's look at Chapter 14, the current trends in portfolio management. This is the final chapter in the book. Here, there were a number of other key observations and trends, but we didn't have enough to write a whole chapter about these particular aspects. We didn't want to lose it, so we summarized them here in this final chapter. Starting with the first topic, taking Agile from project to portfolio to enterprise. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Agile has taken the project management world by storm. And for the last 20 years, Agile has grown tremendously. Agile today is more than just a particular tool or technique or approach. It is a fairly robust set of principles that could be applied at all levels of the organization. In this chapter, or this brief section, talks about what we observe. Number two, using technology to manage emerging risk. Technology itself is also reshaping how organizations manage risks. These are the uncertainties. And emerging risks, by definition, are the unknown unknowns, even to portfolio managers. But technology, given its processing power, given its ability to pull different ideas and views together, is starting to tackle this particular problem. And we suspect that in the near future, the technology will help enable portfolio managers to really make better decisions. Three, portfolio management drives innovation and ideation. As many of you are aware, there's a constant struggle, or at least a discussion, in the world outside whether process oriented disciplines such as project program portfolio management are improving or hindering innovation. Well, here we make a case that portfolio managers portfolio managers who design robust ideation phases, for example, help organizations to be more innovative. 4. PMO and strategic execution, how they work together with portfolio management to make organization stronger and more value oriented. 5. Achieve benefit realization at the organization level and how it ties with portfolio management in making that possible. And finally, in chapter 6, or in the last section of this chapter, the importance of people in portfolio management, something we talked about quite extensively throughout the book. But here we want to summarize our view. So, what are some of the next steps now that we're done with the tour of the books, the book? Well, first, visit our website, www.implementppm.com. You may want to bookmark there because you can also contact some of the contributors as you have questions on the various sections and chapters of the book. Next, join our LinkedIn group. This is for networking, as we talked about before. Also, PMO Advisory, my company, will offer discounts there for some of our courses, especially the Portfolio Management Bootcamp. 3. Participate and contribute in the Advanced Portfolio Management Forum. If you are itching to contribute, to apply your ideas and wisdom to some of the things and help others, this is the forum for you. As mentioned, we're still shaping the agenda with the core team, but you can sign up right now at www.implementppm.com. One thing I should mention, some of our activities, especially the training activities that come with that, will likely earn PDUs for portfolio management, technical PDUs, which I'm sure you know is pretty hard to earn. And then finally, purchase the book. We, of course, will appreciate if you purchase the book. And if you like the book, we hope you are able to put in a favorable review. With any questions, later you will see information how to best contact us. Thank you for your hour of time. And to claim this hour, 1 PDU, you can see the claims instruction on the right. And make sure you hit PDU claims code because that code will shortcut quite a bit of searching. Thank you so much for your time, for spending about the last hour with us. You have my contact information as well as Dr. Panos Chesapanos. And just a quick word on PMO Advisory. PMO Advisory is a leader in project management training. We are one of the few companies that covers the broad spectrum of project program portfolio management as well as other areas, PMO, risk, agile, organization change. We're also creating a new program for people who want to pursue the topmost level, the chief project officer, as well as other senior project executive roles. We are PMI REP, so please come back and visit us. And at www.pmadvisory.com/business training. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.